Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. So here we are with Jason Sharpe, and Jason is the CEO of Namaste Solar. And I was thinking about asking Jason how that came to be, Namaste Solar. Isn't Namaste supposed to be in India, or isn't that about yoga? Or can you put your, feet upon your head or anything like that? Is that how your solar installers work? Are they like doing the downward dog as they install solar modules?
They're like cats on the roof. They're very balanced. So Namaste is also a greeting. It could be considered as simple as hello. We like the interpretation of recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
Oh, the interconnectedness, like Article 705 of the NEC. All right.
There you go. There's a good start. And how the utility grid is connected, how we're all the energy sources we're connecting to the grid are interconnected, how we all as humans on Earth are interconnected as well. So yeah, you can take it a few places.
Yeah, and I guess I have to think go back to yoga class and imagine if I'm supply side interconnected or load side interconnected. What kind of person are you?
I think I'm supply side most of the
Yeah,
time.
I think that sounds good to me too. Yeah. Or maybe we're just off grid in some ways.
Hopefully we have moments where we do get off grid and refuel ourselves.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about, yoga and namaste, I think I'm more, disconnected from the utility.
Well, and more of that's possible, which is so exciting, the way that technology and code has advanced over the last 20 plus years that I've been in the industry. It's exciting that we're more and more that's a possible thing for the average homeowner. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I was thinking I did a class for InterSolar in India, and I was staying in a hotel with this guy from Colorado, Dave Renee. Do you know Dave Renee?
I don't.
But he was president of the International Solar Energy Society, and he's also involved with ASIS, American Solar Energy Society.
Absolutely.
And so we stayed at this fancy hotel in Mumbai, and they had a yoga class by the pool, and it was just him and I doing some yoga. It was kind of cool. So, but all right. And I guess enough of talking about the name of your company, which I always thought was kind of cool.
Well, it's funny, actually, a lot of people told us it was a bad choice and that, it would turn people off or that it meant other things, that it wasn't energy related. And we tried really hard to get people to say Namaste Solar because the solar is an important part and there's a lot of Namastes that do other things. But I think it's served us well. One, the deeper meanings of it, but also it's a unique name in the solar space, at least. So it's memorable.
I think it's the best name for a solar company that I've ever heard of.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I remember seeing on social media and stuff, there's somebody that was working for you, Riley, and that she was doing a lot of videos of installing solar on the roof and all that. So I thought that was pretty cool that you guys let her post stuff, like a lot of people would be afraid of attorneys or something like that, especially in California, here in California.
Well, we're a worker-owned cooperative, and we really believe in employee empowerment. And so we do a lot of things. Our pillars are transparency, democratic decision-making, and cooperative ownership. And so we really try hard to allow individuals to feel empowered and to be leaders within our organization. And so I think Riley was a great example, and she was very passionate about women in installation specifically. And so I think a lot of her social media presence was really promoting that idea. And so, yeah, we try to promote people first.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we'll put a link to the podcast that we had her on the podcast. And yeah, and I remember her, I think there was snow on the roof installing. So you're up there in Colorado and, you get a lot of snow at the high elevation and all that kind of stuff. So what's the policy? What do you do? I know if it snowed here, nobody would do anything because it never snows where I live.
Yeah.
Once every decade, a couple of flakes maybe. But you have it on a regular basis. So I guess you kind of have to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, Denver, the Front Range of Colorado is an interesting place. And I think Colorado has a reputation for more snow and inclement weather than actually exists in Denver. We certainly get snow. Actually, it snowed last night. So I have snow this morning. But usually what happens is the sun comes out the day after the snow And so a lot of times there's groundwork, prep work, there's work not on the roof, and the crews will show up and shovel the roof. And when the sun comes out, by afternoon, the roofs are generally dry and able to work on. So, I mean, we sometimes have snow days, absolutely. And if we get a big storm come through, we have to cancel work for the day. But a lot of times the weather allows us to keep moving. And it's not overly hot in the summer, although there's hot days, and not overly snowy in the winter, but there's snow days. But most of the time we're able to perform work outside.
Yeah, and I guess if you're doing flashing, and the flashing that maybe now is called old style, where they're like quick mounts and stuff, and they're like prying up asphalt shingles, that there's a certain temperature. I think maybe it's like 41 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that, that the shingles have to be before you start like prying in between them, because that, that asphalt in there will crack.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely have to wait. Well, roofs get hot and black surfaces absorb more heat. And so once the sun is on the roof, getting up to temperature, happens pretty quickly. And we're doing fewer and fewer flashing. Flashing's now considered worse for roof integrity. You can do more damage to a roof trying to install flashing than a lot of the new micro flashed products, they call them, where the product goes right over the existing shingle system. So less and less often are we now doing flashings. We never did anything without a flashing when the industry started. But I think it's interesting to see how technology, A, makes things safer, and B, makes things faster. There's been a lot of evolution in the solar industry in 20 years. So it's interesting to see how that evolves with our business.
Yeah, I remember doing classes in Canada, and they were just like, hey, we just do it when it snows anyway, even if it's colder, we just make it work, Or sometimes they'd have torches where they warm the roof up.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever used torches. We use the big torch in the sky, right?
Yeah, that big old fusion reactor up there.
Exactly. That works well.
And then I talked to some people that were dealing with snow on the roof on New Year's Eve, trying to get everything in for the tax credits. I think there was somebody up in Michigan. We were talking on the podcast about that. How was your New Year's Eve? Were you racing to get things up before the tax credits expire, or under 10 feet of snow or anything like that?
I mean, always. I think the solar industry, with tax credits in particular and tax planning, there's always a end of the year sprint. And there's always customers that, are really insistent upon us completing the work. I think with 20 years comes wisdom, hopefully. Hopefully you get better as a business over time. And we've learned through some painful years around setting good customer expectations. And this year we took a strategy where we ended up with a wait list. And Namaste Solar, we like to under promise and over deliver. So I think the final 50 projects of the year we sold with we might not get it done, and we'll give you a discount. If it slides into next year, are you willing to take that chance with us? And we'll do everything we can to get it in. But that really relieves pressure on the operations teams and customer expectations. So you're not in a situation where people are feeling like they need to do anything unsafe. I mean, the thing that's most important for our business is safety. We need all of our installers to come home every day and to not be injured on the job. And there's no tax deadline that's more important than the safety of our people. So we try to design our business around high integrity, high communication, and flexibility. And then it tends to work out. We learned it. We didn't do that early, and we had some upset customers in early years. But yeah, you do it long enough, you can set good boundaries and be a good communicator. And that helps run the business in a smoother way for everybody.
Why do you think that OSHA doesn't consider 5 feet of powder fall protection?
Well, I mean, you could probably get it tested. It probably depends on the density of the snow as well. Thicker snow stuffs to fall better than powder, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe if you had an OSHA engineer determining that,
right,
that would work.
Yeah.
I have a picture in one of my books, the PV Building and Fire Code book, and it was my brother's girlfriend was living up in Mammoth, up in the mountains in California. And you couldn't tell where the roof started and the ground started, because it was just, a big pile of snow.
Where the fall needs to be more than 6 feet, right? So if the snow is close enough, then it probably makes it safe.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, in our front range, we don't get that depth of snow that the mountains do. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And I noticed too that you have kind of you're a CEO, but you have like an engineering background.
Hmm.
Aren't you afraid that you'll only be as successful or like, I mean, Elon Musk, it sounds sort of like him or something, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people have circuitous paths in life to their careers.
Uh-huh.
I had a epiphany when I was 18. I found a home power magazine. I think a Richard Perez home power magazine back in the mid 90s.
You found the magazine and not founded the magazine, I guess.
No, did
Yeah.
not found it,
Okay.
but
Uh-huh.
discovered. I discovered
Yeah.
home power,
Great
and
magazine. Yeah.
great magazine.
Me too. I used to read those things before I got into solar.
I wonder how many people it attracted into solar,
Uh-huh.
And I had this sort of epiphany. I took a gap year out of high school, and I had this epiphany that electricity was the most important thing for humanity. And then subsequently realized that if electricity is the most important thing for modern humanity, we better figure out a way to make it sustainably. And so I decided to go to college for an electrical engineering degree to understand electricity, because if it was that important, I should learn about it. So I took a degree in electrical engineering. And in my senior year of college, I decided for my senior project to build a solar electric car. And I was part of the American Tour de Sol, and I raced it from the World Trade Center to the Liberty Bell back in 1994.
Wow. Awesome. Wow. You've been at it for a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Uh-huh.
Been a few
Yeah.
pauses along the way, but I was really fascinated with home power and this idea of off-grid living and this idea of generating electricity from sunshine. And so my career started with electrical engineering, and it served me really well because I've been a technical expert. It helps me explain sales. It's helped me in organization to be able to run a company. So it's been a great experience, and I love knowing the technical piece. One of my challenges is not getting too far in the weeds because I know enough to be dangerous, as they say.
Yeah, I've noticed in the past, like some companies, they go out there and they start growing and then they hire somebody that doesn't know the first thing about the technical part. And they always go bankrupt, I figure, you know.
Yeah.
You just get in some CEO and it happened to this company that I was working at doing classes for Solar Universe. They also became Repower.
Hmm.
And have you heard of them?
I remember Solar
Uh,
Universe. Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they hired some CEO that didn't know the first thing about solar, and pretty soon they turned into a call center, and now there's a bunch of people that they owe money to, and they went under. So,
Yeah.
and I think I always blamed it on hiring some professional CEO that didn't know the first thing about solar. It's like I teach a lot of these NABCEP associate classes, like beginner classes for solar, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of CEOs that don't know like that much that they could have just spent a week learning about the technology and they probably would be like super successful like Jason Sharpe, like you.
That would be great.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I know it's fun. I love the technical aspect, and I do think it's really helped me navigate the industry because I can understand some of the nuances or the risks involved in certain financing products or financing mechanisms for, leases or PPAs, or so that technical background I think has served me really well. And one of my favorite things I've done over the years is I teach an NABCEP class to our installers. I haven't done it in a couple of years, and so it's probably time to pick it back
Oh,
up again. But I used to have a class that I had with all of our installers to teach people the NABCEP
oh,
perspective and DC installation. We're now a full electrical contractor. I'm a master electrician, and all of our installers go through an electrical apprenticeship program. And so the majority of the education goes through the apprenticeship program. So there's less of a need for me to be the teacher now that we have like a formal education program for our apprentices.
wow, that's pretty cool. So you have an electrical apprenticeship program that you're running?
Well, we don't run it. We participate in the IEC, the Independent Electrical Contractors Association, is in Colorado, and we partner with them, and all of our apprentices get enrolled in their education program.
Wow, that's really cool. And I guess with bigger systems like over a megawatt, there's some tax credit benefits for, having people in apprenticeship programs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that apprenticeship is one of the more confusing things in the electrical trade and now solar industry. Yes, projects over 1 megawatt require or have wage and tax benefits for contractors who participate in registered apprenticeship programs. And the
Mm-hmm.
word registered is important because you
Oh,
can have non-registered apprenticeship programs that have different rules that don't qualify. So we have both in our company. Half of our company operates through a state apprenticeship program. It's not registered with the federal government or a registered apprenticeship program. And then our commercial, the half of our business that's commercial, all of those apprentices are in the registered program. And it's, the electrical industry is vast. You can wire hospitals, you can wire solar, you can wire homes, and an electrical license allows you to do any and all of the above. So it's a lot of ground to try to cover through a training program. So yeah, interesting things how the workforce will evolve and the electrical industry evolve. I'll be curious.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like about apprenticeship programs and what they are. And you said like registered and unregistered. So if I just said I have an apprenticeship program right here and I'm going to have me and my cats teach everybody about solar, I guess that maybe that could be considered an unregistered program. I'm not sure, but we could make certificates on my printer. and then And I think that there's not really a such thing as a registered solar apprenticeship program. Does that sound right?
That is true.
Mhm.
Actually, I was part of a group that worked to try to get a solar apprenticeship program. And the Department of Labor and the federal government determined solar installation was not an apprenticeable occupation unto itself, that it was too narrow of a scope to warrant an apprenticeship program. And so,
I bet I know why.
why?
Because the IBEW is strong and they don't want competition.
I mean, there's
Mm.
probably an aspect of that. There are many different programs beyond the IBW. I do think that they're a very strong interest related to apprenticeship. They're very passionate about their program. But there has been this tension in every state in the United States has a different determination of who's quote qualified. So
Mm-hmm.
the qualifications in Colorado are different than California or different than New York, and so there's a lot of state rule. And I think that's another thing is they didn't necessarily want the federal government telling them how to do a trade. They want to do it at the state level. I really like the way it is in Colorado right now. And I love the idea that my solar installers are apprentice electricians and we're getting people electrical licenses through the work they do at our company. And that license is super valuable for the employee. So if an employee graduates with an electrical or gets an electrical license at the time that they're with Namaste Solar, they now have a career and it can be a good paying career and it's a flexible career. And you can wire all kinds of you can put in EV chargers and you can do interconnection for storage systems. Like it's a much more
Yeah,
robust
that's
or
awesome.
beneficial credential than just being a solar installer. And so I like that our employees get electrical licenses as an installer at our company.
I think a lot of other companies would be afraid of that. Like you're a worker-owned company, so you could do what's best for the employee. But a lot of companies want to just do what's best for the employer. And they're afraid if they give their employees too many skills, they're going to go get a different job or they'll have to pay them more,
I think that's it. They'll have to pay them more, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, and that's, it's interesting with prevailing wage and projects over 1 megawatt. If everybody has to pay more and everybody has to pay to the same standard, then as to the contractors, we have to charge more. And I actually think that makes sense. I think that's fair because I think the people who are doing the physical work are super valuable and those skills are really valuable. And I think they should get paid a living wage and a fair wage. So I'm not afraid of that. What I'd like to see is let's raise all the boats and charge the right amount for the services we provide. I think there's actually too much money in the solar industry at the top, at the finance. The banks and the financiers make the highest margins, and the people that are doing the work make the lowest margins. And part of Namaste Solar's goal is, transforming energy, transforming business. We want to try to help right that pay paradigm or that disparity between the highest wage earners in our country and the lowest wage earners in our country. And I think electrical contracting and skilled trades are going to be more and more valuable. And I think we should pay people the right amount of money to do that work. So I'm a supporter of that too.
I think I want to come to Colorado and work for you. Or, or I guess you would say work for myself because it's a worker-owned company, which seems like a really good business model. Are there other employee-owned solar companies out there that you know of?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Namaste Solar, we also, early on, we were growing really fast. And You mentioned like companies that end up being a call center, and it's partly because the opportunity to grow at different times presents itself. And, a lot of people just growth is good. That's what we're taught in American capitalism. And early on, we decided we had a great value proposition in Colorado, but there was this opportunity. And so our mantra sort of started to become there's a co-op for that. And so Blake Jones, one of the founders of Namaste Solar, and several other companies around the country formed a purchasing cooperative called Amicus Solar. And Amicus Solar, we're now 90 companies across the United States, similar small companies in local markets. But we put our purchasing power together to help lower costs so we could compete with the larger corporations in the world. So how are you going to compete with a Sunrun or a Tesla or Sonova? We pool our purchasing power to lower acquisition costs for products so we can keep our prices competitive with the larger national players. But it was a way for us to help grow the solar industry in smaller businesses without it being Namaste Solar. So we like the idea of cooperative business and to empower people in local communities to be successful, as opposed to it needs to be the Namaste Solar name on everything. So that's been kind of our approach. It's like, we don't have to do it all. We can partner with people and help them be successful.
So since it's employee owned and you're the CEO, does that mean that you see some worker out there on the roof and you go, "Hey, boss"?
Kind of, not really, but kind of. I mean, so we have what we call a circular accountability structure. So I'm the CEO and I run the business like a normal business is run. There's a hierarchical structure. There's, vice presidents and directors and managers, and there's a crew lead on a crew. And if the crew lead is responsible for the crew, and they tell people what work they should do that day, for example, and they hold them accountable if somebody's not performing, the crew lead has empowerment to correct that situation. So that's the normal business everybody's aware of. But that group of people that you're managing are owners of the business. And so they're the shareholders, and they can call a vote, and they are basically my boss. The biggest way they hold me accountable is they elect a board of directors, and the board of directors is literally my boss. So my board meets with me 6 times a year. They have hiring, firing, they set my wage, they hold me accountable to the goals for the organization. So it's circular in that I run the business full of owners. The owners elect the board manages the CEO. So everybody has a boss. And that works well. When you have to be accountable to somebody, I think that's healthy. Like, who is Elon Musk accountable to? Unfortunately, not much, right?
Yeah. So that's interesting. So the employees own it. Probably most of the employees are solar installers. Most solar installers like to drink beer. So did they come up with things like, we're going to fire you unless we get beer on tap in the lunchroom?
So we have to get 60% of the owners together to pass any rule. And there has to be 10-day advance notice on whatever that vote's going to be. So we have bylaws that sort of restrict, or not necessarily restrict, but structure the way the owners. But yes, the owners could theoretically, they could have a vote to say we're going to have beer in the lunchroom. But,
I just gave them an idea. Shoot.
No.
We better cut that part, huh?
Why was the Electoral College created in the United States democratic system? And I think it was because we didn't trust the uninformed voter, right? So if you don't think someone's smart enough or educated enough or engaged enough or manipulated enough, I mean, maybe if you think of what's happening with corporate media, you need something to protect from the ignorant voter, let's call it. And so what I think we've learned through this process is people care, and people want the company to be successful. And when you're engaged and you care and you want the same outcome, you make good decisions. And so one of the things I've had to practice over 20 years is to trust the group. And when you have something like let's drink beer in the break room, there's voices that come of reason and wisdom that say, hey, that's not a good idea for our business. We can drink beer on the weekend.
Yeah.
Right? And so we've had some controversial votes, and, the group is wise. And I think when you have an aligned goal of a successful business, democracy can work. And there hasn't been too many uprisings as long as I keep people informed and engaged and demonstrate care and quality and bring their feedback. I mean, I also think that more important is listening, and more important is receiving feedback from the people in the organization so they can see their voice is being considered in decision making. And I think that just goes such a long way to help people feel engaged and empowered at a company.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. So it sounds like a really good business model, but I'm wondering how it starts, because you probably just don't have two solar installers that say, like, let's make an employee-owned company. And I think that it's a really good idea. I think we need more of it all across the country. So how can somebody, start one up, an employee-owned solar company startup?
Yeah. And you had asked me earlier, and I didn't directly answer the question. I was talking about Amicus, but Amicus has more than 20 employee-owned companies, I believe. And a lot of people thinking about succession planning start thinking about employee ownership. And I'm reminded of that to answer your question. There's two ways. You can either start a company as employee owned, or sometimes you have a sole proprietor who has started a company they've been passionate about. They've ran the company for 20 or 30 years and they're ready to retire. And so you can convert to employee ownership as an alternative to other sales of the company. You do sell it, like you sell it to your employees. You're not getting zero value. You did build
so you
something.
get paid.
So you get paid, but it takes patience and planning. You need time to arrange the structures, and sometimes you need time to extract your capital. So you might sell the company, but it might take 5 or 10 years to get the cash, all the cash you would like out of the business, because the business helps generate the payoff for the departing owner. So I'd say more companies now are likely conversions than they are started. Namaste Solar started with 3 founders with the vision of having an employee-owned company. We did convert to the current structure in 2011 and went from the original structure, which really didn't have a lot of rules, to like clearer rules so that we could scale. And we're 180 people now, and we've been in business now 21 years, and it's been a really successful model.
So how does an employee-owned company work as far as like organizing it and voting and all that? Is it one person, one vote? Do some people have more votes than other people because they've been around for a lot longer? It's like there's the person that's been there for 10 years, the new employee that's been there for 5 minutes, or what happens when somebody moves on, they retire or they move or something like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a ton of flexibility in the different ways that work for the different organizations. And there's also capital versus decision-making. And those two can be completely separate. Like ESOPs, for example, employee stock option plans, are employee-owned companies and they share the capital side. But sharing the equity or the capital side doesn't mean you share decision-making. So if you're committing to employee ownership, you don't have to commit to democratic decision-making, for example. So like there's 2 aspects to it. Namaste Solar, we're shared ownership, equal share of ownership, and one person, one vote, equal share of decision-making. However, what gets voted on is really the big question, because day-to-day operations are not democratic. We have a typical hierarchical business structure for day-to-day decision-making with empowered job roles that are there to make business decisions just like a typical business. But governance, and a lot of times sharing money, a lot of those votes go to the ownership. For example, we changed healthcare this last year, and we were faced with a 30% healthcare increase with our current provider. And so we went to the owners because we had an alternative healthcare option, but it was changing healthcare providers. And changing healthcare providers can be really impactful to people. So we said, okay, do you all want to pay for this price increase, or do y'all want to switch to the new provider? And we had a presentation, we had a debate, and then we had a vote. And the owners decided it was smart to save 30% and we switched to a new provider. So it's great when you can put those types of decisions to the group and say, you can pay more or we can switch, and people can share their perspectives and, we made a good decision and people are happy with it, or at least majoritively happy with it.
So you don't have to make a separate vote every time somebody goes to the hardware store and they have to pick which kind of screw to buy?
Nope.
And then what happens when somebody retires? Do they still have a share of ownership or decision making or anything like that?
Yeah, so you have to be an active owner to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And when you depart, we have a redemption process. Our board of directors holds the fiduciary responsibilities and they make the decision of when and if to redeem people. And so the interesting thing is the board has all the power. The individual that we could hold on to someone's investment for as long as we deem it necessary. So if we were in challenging time financially and people started leaving and wanted their money back, we can say, hey, until the ship is righted, until we're on stable ground, we're not going to give you your investment back.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of power and there's some trust in running the business in a responsible way. It also encourages people to leave the business in the healthiest way possible, because if you upset the apple cart, you might not get your money back. So your interests are aligned with ours and let's make this transition as smooth as possible and let's set ourselves up for future success. So it also helps with healthy departures.
So people do sort of get equity, if they've been there for a long time, they have more ownership, I would assume? Huh?
Yeah, there's multiple structures. ESOPs in particular build up equity, and then when you leave, you get the equity. Namaste Solar decided that we wanted to be a dividend-paying investment. So what we do is profit share. And instead of that profit going into your equity account and getting it when you leave, we pay it to you the year that you earn it. So
okay,
at the end of each year, we take the profit and we take a percentage of that profit and distribute it in cash to the owners.
That's pretty neat. So I hope more people do this kind of thing. Yeah.
Me too. We're very passionate about employee ownership. We think it's a secret sauce. We also think it delivers better products for the customers. It's, more engaged employees. Yeah, we think it's a win-win for the world.
All right. So where would people go? Let's say somebody wants to convert their company or start up a company, like Amicus, something. Would they help people figure out how to do this?
There's definitely people within Amicus. There's resources. There's a growing number of resources. In the state of Colorado, the governor put together an employee ownership office, and they have people and resources within the state government that help Colorado businesses convert to employee ownership. There's some national organizations. The National Center for Employee Ownership, NCEO, I think is one of them. They hold national conferences, and there's a growing number of legal, and there's actually some interested financial entities that help with bridge loans to give the employees access to the capital needed to pay out the original owner and then use that loan to buy the company, for themselves over time. So quite a few resources, and it's sort of a growing trend, this idea of employee ownership.
Great. So you said the governor's in it too. Is that Governor Polis?
Yes, Governor Polis set up an employee ownership office.
Yeah, I was at the American Solar Energy Society conference a couple of years ago in Boulder, and he was a speaker, and it was the first time I ever heard a politician say the word solar module. So everybody says solar panel, so he was correct as far as the NEC goes. So I was pretty impressed by your governor.
That's fantastic. That's funny. That's one of my little pet peeves when people call them panels and not modules.
Great. Okay. You're not going to find me saying solar panel.
It's been interesting to think about code. Like you and I think, first interacted around energy code. In my early days in the solar industry, we had to do so much to educate inspectors and electrical contractors on what solar was and how to safely connect it to the grid, and even what the code meant. We did a lot of work in the old days. I remember John Wiles bringing up safety issues, and I'm fascinated your perspective. And I've been thinking a lot about how technology and the intersection of technology and code has really transformed the industry. And with meter collars, energy management systems, and battery energy storage systems, we're at the point in the industry I dreamed of when I was that person having epiphanies back in the early 90s. I am so excited about where technology is. Like we are on the cusp of the evolution of the industry that I've been hoping for 20 years. And I'm just very excited about what this new technology and the new code, what it means for the industry over the next decade.
Cool, cool. Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty amazing how fast and how far we've come. And, trying to imagine where we're going to be. Do you have any idea where we're going to be in 10 years, or are you a futurist? You have a crystal ball?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, the tactical, practical thing is I'm excited to plug my electric car into my energy storage solution at home and
Oh,
have
no, that'd be
a
great.
week's worth of power with my solar. And I'm not worried about power outages. I mean, I could basically be off grid
hmm
for the most part at that stage. And like early on, that was sort of my dream, was to live in an off grid home. And so I think we're on that cusp. I think the technology is in existence now. If I was allowed to plug my electric car bidirectionally into my energy storage system in my home, I mean, I think that would open up a ton of doors. So I dream of a day where utilities see renewables and distributed energy resources as valuable assets. And with virtual power plants and the evolution of technology, that intersection, I think that's going to become real in the next 10 years. And I think their ability to resist the value and the benefit of the technology, I think it's going to be overcome here in the next 10 years.
How soon do you think until every electric car that you buy, you can just plug into your house and support the grid or even disconnect from the grid? Like,
I mean, I think technologically you could do that today.
oh yeah, for sure. But it's just like nobody's selling the cars, the chargers. You can get
Yep.
a Nissan Leaf that will do it and other cars that will do it, like the Ford F-150 and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
or a Cybertruck, but they don't have the policy to, connect to the grid with your electric vehicle in most places. I mean, there's a couple of little exceptions. So it just seems like politicians, maybe business interests, like, maybe Tesla is trying to sell more power walls. I'm not sure.
I mean, yes and yes, right? I mean,
Mm,
it's unfortunately the current federal administration is causing a setback. I mean, the momentum and the quality and the value of the technology, in my opinion, is going to shine through and is going to overcome any
mhm.
roadblocks or the short-term slowdown that the current administration is trying to. But we're trying to upset transforming energy, transforming business. We're upsetting some significant entrenched power structures. The
Mhm.
utility grid's been entrenched in its current thinking and power and economic benefit for over 100 years. I mean, they have a 120-year head start on the renewable energy industry as far as becoming an entrenched interest in its value proposition or its profit, really, from the current situation. Oil and gas. I mean, oil and gas receives trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in subsidies, and wars are fought on the global scale over access to oil and gas. And so, yeah, how long is it going to take to overcome those entrenched power structures with a lot of money now being more focused on trying to stop the progress of the renewable energy industry? I mean, you could look at that and say, boy, it's never going to happen or it's 100 years. But look at how far we've come in 20. The Sunny Boy, the 2500 Sunny Boy. Remember the
Yeah,
red
yeah.
SMA Sunny Boy?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Or even the one that would 120 volts. They even had one that was 120.
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, that technology was introduced to the US market in 2005.
Mm.
And that really is what caused the solar grid interconnected revolution that's happened over the last now 21 years, right? That technology was just introduced then. So that took 20 years to get to the point where we were such a threat to the entrenched power structures that they're now doing whatever they can to try to slow us down. Look at that technology advancement
Mm.
compared to energy management solutions, meter collars, storage systems. Look at the ability for inverters to support and help improve the quality of power and resiliency on the grid. So technology accelerates, and I think change accelerates. And so that's why I'm so excited about the cusp we're on, is look at the new advancements that are now in front of us for us to benefit people and the grid. You know, I guess I'm an optimist, but I'm thinking 10 years, things are going to look significantly different.
Yeah, and I was even thinking that a few years ago. So,
Yeah, maybe five.
Yeah, it just seems like it's the policy and the politicians that are holding us back. That
Yes.
we definitely have the code, we have the technology to do it, but nobody's going to make an inverter that costs, even if it costs $5 more, that does all these neat things that you can't do, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah. I mean, I think technology is pushing policy and has
Mm,
been for a while. So hopefully the innovation will continue to be able to answer the questions before they're asked, kind of a thing. But yeah, I do think there's entrenched interests that are profiting from the existing system that are resisting that change. And I think it's going to be harder and harder. And look at the California fire, however many hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that the utility was held accountable for. We had power outages in Texas. We just had 1 million people without power in the southeast of the United States because of a snow and ice storm. Colorado had the most expensive wildfire in history 3 years ago, and now the utility is shutting off the power in a windstorm because they're worried in a windstorm they could cause a fire. And so, they shut the power down locally. We've had the power shut down 3 times in 2026, 3 times in 3 months. And the phone rings off the hook. Every time the power goes out, people call us because they don't want to go a week without power at their home. And we have the technology so that they don't have to. So,
hmm
I mean, I don't see those trends, the cost of electricity with data centers, the reliability issues because of weather events. The train's not slowing down, in my opinion. And
hmm
so I think politicians are going to have to get on board despite the entrenched profit centers that are resisting that change. I think the solar industry needs to do a better job of investing in politicians and change. And unfortunately, the entrenched interests spend a lot more money than the renewable energy industry does on politics and change. So,
hmm
I think that's something we got to figure out in the next decade.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of ways where you could, do something like bidirectional electric vehicles or power your house with an electric vehicle. But then there's that interconnection agreement. I was wondering if there's like some kind of way where you can have something like an off-grid PV system that still has a DC connection to the grid where it's just essentially a battery charger. And then
Mhm.
you wouldn't have to get an interconnection agreement. But then I can't really get clear answers, and it would probably be different for every utility. And if you ask them, I guess that you say, "Do I need an interconnection agreement?" They would say, "Yes, you do." Whenever you have to ask that question. I was
Yep.
thinking of another way of like maybe if you it could evolve besides just having like a battery charger that's connected to your off-grid PV system, a grid tied or like a battery charger that has the ability to charge the battery to your off-grid system and the battery charger's connected to the grid. But another way that I don't think there could be any argument about is let's say that you have an electric vehicle charger that's connected to the grid, and then you unplug your electric vehicle charger and then you plug your car into your house. That way you could get through December, whatever the dark month or when you need it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to work on, the public service, the utilities. And I don't know if you ever played Monopoly. Remember there was
Been a while. Yeah. Get
yeah,
out of
there was
jail free card. I use a whole bunch of those. Yeah.
where there were the utilities, right, on the railroad, right? Like there are net benefit things for public service. Public service is for the good of the public. And if you think about disadvantaged communities, low income communities, like if the people with enough money just say, well, we're not just going to connect to the grid anymore, and the grid loses those people paying into a public system, that's not going to serve the public to the greater, so I think we have to find out a way for utilities to embrace renewables in a way that's win-win. And when I say renewables, I mean distributed renewables. I do think centralized renewables, without storage, I can see how that causes utilities challenges. I don't think utilities have embraced the value of distributed resources, and that we need to find a way that utilities can stay profitable, they can stay in business. Now, how much profit? Maybe that's a question we should ask. I forget how many $1 billion Excel Energy made last year, like $6 billion. Like, how much is enough from a public service? I think that's a question we should explore. But
Every person that works for a utility should have a Lamborghini.
at least the executive team. So, like, there needs to be more balance than we have now. I think with seeing the wealth disparity from corporations and how much the wealth are getting richer and the 90% are being left behind and there's more and more disparity, how does a public service, a cost-effective energy resource for the average American, how does that fit into the puzzle? And that has to be there too. But I just am a believer in distributed energy resources being helpful in that solution. And so I'd like to see that evolution in the next decade. It might take longer than another 10 years, but look how far we've come in 20. So,
oh, I'm sure that you're going to make it happen. I think
I'm going to try.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's really important, and it's kind of puzzling, like why it hasn't happened already, because we already have all the ability to do that. And yeah, I guess it's just, it takes time for things to evolve politically, probably because there's too many attorneys in the world.
That is, yeah. I think attorneys is part of it. And, nobody wants to give up any power or money. And if you're the one making the profit and with all the power, why would you be willing for any change to ever happen?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a human thing, right? If I have power, I'm going to use it to preserve my power. And that's unfortunate, but that is the reality. So we have to provide an improvement upon the system. We have to provide a benefit to people. And I think we already do provide a benefit to the majority, but we have to get the majority to see it and understand it and support it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Recently I did it. One of my favorite podcasts that I made, I did it all by myself, and it was kind of satire. And it was like, why Republicans love solar. And then I was saying like the grid is communist. That was like my thumbnail for it on YouTube. And then I was just reading something yesterday that I think it said, it was from SEIA, and I think it said that like 57% of solar in the US now is in red states. So it's not really as political as people try to make it out to be,
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't political until a year ago. I mean, the original investment tax credit was passed under, was it Bush? I think the first Bush presidency. Yeah. And then it's been bipartisan extended multiple times. It was extended under the first Trump administration. It was extended under the Obama administration. So it's been a bipartisan thing because it's good for American business. It's good for ratepayers. It's good for business. Like there are so many benefits to the renewable energy industry. It's been bipartisan. And so it's this latest president and this latest administration that has vilified or made it become a partisan issue. Up until now, it hasn't been partisan. And so that's disappointing to me because I do think there is a lot of support from the public. There's a lot of support from people who identify right or left that want energy independence and that want cost-effective, reliable energy at their home. I mean, a lot of times politics are funny because really we want the same thing at the end of the day. I think most of us, I think it's the how to get there or who wins or who loses, or does somebody have to win and lose to get there? I think those are really where the debates lie. We all want cost-effective, reliable energy. Yeah. That's not a debate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was kind of wondering too, if there was any strategy to the tax credits expiring. Like most of the tax credits are not the residential self-owned tax credit. Most people finance their systems with third-party ownership and stuff like that. And so there's going to be a big rush to get these things done, and people are going to be installing more before it expires, which happens to be somewhere near the midterm elections. And so it'll make it look like business is better artificially, and then they might extend it right after that. I don't know.
Well, the consumer tax credits went away in 25. And so now it's all corporate tax credits because, of course, we can't trust consumers, but we can trust corporations. That's that's the American way.
You know about corporate personhood, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. They're corporate people are more important than people. And so with start construction rules, and, I think really the push is really going to be really 2030 and 2029. We already saw an uptick in the market in 25 for consumer tax credits, people wanting to get those before they went away. I think you'll see the next push really in 29, 2030, which is actually after the next presidential election. So the hope is there's an opportunity for a new administration and some change before 2030. That's part of our goal. And on the other side, we call it a free market, or people like to speak to free market economics. In my opinion, that doesn't really exist. I mean, we live in one of the most heavily regulated and tax supported industries in the world. And if you took away all the subsidies for all energy and just let energy sources,
Do you include the subsidy of all the wars in the Middle East?
even if you don't do that, right?
Uh-huh.
But I mean, sure, add the wars, add Venezuela and add Iran and add that to the cost, add the Russian Ukrainian war expenses, right? I mean, a lot of those are related towards fossil fuels, right? So even if you don't include war expense, just get away with all the other subsidies that exist for fossil fuels and let renewables, play on a fair playing field. I think we would win. And so to target the renewable energy industry's subsidies, but to not talk about other energy subsidies is unfair. And I'm also at a point where I almost would like to see us not have a tax credit or a subsidy and just let the market adjust, because I think the value proposition still exists. And that's where, how do we talk about rising utility costs? Every time utilities get more expensive, in Colorado, they just filed for a 10% increase. In California, people pay as much as 60 cents a kilowatt hour for
Right here. That's
electricity. You don't need a federal tax credit at 60 cents a kilowatt hour. So as utilities are needing to spend more and more money for traditional fuels and infrastructure, distributed renewables become more and more and more cost effective. And that equation is going to continue. And I look forward to, before I retire, I would love to see us not dependent upon a tax credit.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, let's get rid of all subsidies for nuclear, for fossil fuels,
natural gas,
for everything.
for oil. Yep. Let's get
Solar,
rid of all of it.
and all that. And then let's make a whole lot of data centers, and then we'll think that 60 cents a kilowatt hour is cheap. Everybody will be going, oh, you remember when it was only 60 cents a kilowatt hour?
Exactly.
I think I was in Dubai doing a class one time, and the people that live there, they call them Emiratis. They're like the ones that are like, from there for generations, not the people that are just working there, which is most of the people. I think they were paying 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, I want to do solar. And you like run the numbers, and it's like, how do you compete against, make solar electricity for 2 cents a kilowatt hour?
Well, I mean, in Colorado, a lot of businesses, there's a demand charge, which is the highest 15-minute interval in a 30-day period. So design a system to help with your highest 15-minute interval when you don't know when it occurs. That's really hard. And then for the fuel costs, it's only 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So, if we can't touch the demand charge, which is 80% of the bill, then you're left with 4 cents a kilowatt hour to offset the volumetric charge. So we need good rate design that really actually lowers distribution costs and infrastructure costs. The local utility here, the majority of their profits made on increasing distribution. So if you have centralized power production remote from your load, all the stuff in between is what they make their profit on. So they have no incentive to reduce demand. I mean, there's the incentive, we want to lower ratepayers' costs. You could say that. But really, their financial incentive is to increase remote production and increase local demand, and then charge for all the stuff in between. That's how they make their money. And as long as the profit center is designed on that model, what are they going to do, right? They're going to allow demand charges to increase, and they're going to allow power production to increase, and they're going to make more money on putting those two pieces together, right? So we have to change the financial incentives really to be beneficial to the ratepayers. And I don't think we're doing a good job with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So distributed energy, if you make it where you use it, that takes away from their profits because they don't get to build these big old thick power lines.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And I think a lot of utilities, I think there's this common thread where we all complain about demand charge. Like we've heard of the duck curve and how solar doesn't help and the peak demand's getting higher. Well, then let's build rates and incentives to address peak demand. And no. We don't really want to design something that would really help with peak demand. We just want to complain about it so we can charge more.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Okay. In addition to this podcast being brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast, it is brought to you by Intellectual Curiosity. Well, let's see. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or let people know about?
Well, I'm kind of curious how you see or, think about how code evolution, like I think EMS, energy management systems, and PMS, power management systems, are pretty new to the code.
Yep.
And you might know better than I. I forget if they were introduced in 2020 and then had significant increase, improvements in 23. And I'm curious to read the 26 code. I haven't gotten a 26 code book yet, but I'm sort of wondering how you see those innovations. I feel like designing solar now is significantly different. And 705 interconnection rules with EMS battery solutions like blew my mind what you can do now.
Yeah.
Because you're monitoring how much is coming from the utility, you're throttling how much you can deliver at any one time from the inverter. Like 120% rule, like what's that? Who cares? Like we don't even need that anymore, So I'm just kind of curious how you see that change and what you teach.
They call it 705.13, and in the 2020 NEC is when it first came out. It was called
2020
Power Control Systems.
Yep.
And then in the 2023 NEC, they changed it to Energy Management Systems, 705.13. And then just now in the 2026 NEC, they changed it back to Power Control Systems. And it didn't really change that much. What is it? UL 916 or UL 3141, I think it is. And I think it's kind of like the status of bidirectional electric vehicle charging. It's like, it's so new, we're not seeing much of it. There's just like, it's not mainstream or anything yet. But it is really cool what you could do. So like for you're doing, where are you going to add the solar or the storage? And you don't want to overload wires when you have power coming from two different directions. And so that could come from two directions and then go another direction. And that's the conductor you have to worry about. And we can control these things with electronics. So we could actually reduce the size of our, our wires and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really cool, but we're not seeing it super mainstream yet. It's just, I think it's a little bit complicated, and for people to make the equipment and get it listed and, changing their ways. But we're seeing them. We have like Lumen and Span doing their things, and there's, other equipment out there too. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're seeing it with meter collars. So like,
oh yeah, the meter collars.
So meter collars
connector,
enable connector, Tesla, Enphase, I think Solar Edge, all have these meter collars. And so now we're able to put a meter collar in, not have to do a service change, have whole house backup. And like, if I have a meter collar, I can connect to a sub panel, and the meter collar talks to the energy management system in the battery system and throttles that. So I don't have to worry about 120% in the sub panel, for example. So we're doing that. We're doing designs now. I mean, we've been incorporating EMS now for a little over a year, and with meter collars and batteries, for us, it's a game changer. Like we're really excited about how they interact with existing wiring systems. And then in Colorado, where, there's 30 states looking at balcony solar or plug-in solar bills, and power control systems are the key to keeping house wiring safe with a balcony solar system. So I'm really curious. UL just wrote a new testing procedure, and I'm curious to see who's the first to market with the new UL standard for balcony solar, plug-in solar. And Colorado's on the verge of passing a bill. Utah passed one unanimously last year when a GOP dominated state, to your point of solar being deployed in red states. And there's a bunch of states looking at plug-in solar that is dependent on PCS. So I'll be really curious how much change happens even in the next year.
Yeah, and we're working on the 2029 National Electrical Code. And so there's going to be something in there that's going to address, plug-in balcony solar. So that'll be kind of neat to have some, real rules that we can quote on there. It was interesting that I was over at the Intersolar conference in Munich last year, and they had a ton of booths that were just there for balcony solar. So it's a huge thing. Yeah. And I think a lot of people just do it anyway, if it's against the law or not. They're just going to go down to Costco, buy it, plug it in.
Yeah, that's one of the things the proponents are saying is let's create rules so people do it safely. And there are differentiation in the products that you buy. I think Germany has like 1 million balcony solar systems installed in that country alone. So, and if you think about like people living in apartments, people not with a capital ability or even home ownership to put rooftop solar on, but want to participate in the solar industry. I mean, I think it's cool It's a cool idea and a cool technology.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure it's safe, but I think the technology is there. So like, let's figure out how to do it well and use the technology. It's exciting for me.
Yeah. And so like you have a 1500 watt space heater, and if you had a 1500 watt balcony solar system and you just plug one of them in, it's just as safe as your space heater, pretty much, in
That's
my
right.
opinion. Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree. I think PCS really helps so that you don't overload a circuit.
Uh-huh.
I imagine this little battery powered clip you put on your breaker that talks like either power line communication or what internet enabled. Like we have Nest thermostats or, there's smart thermostats that talk to the internet. I have on my lock talks to the internet, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So imagining a little device that you could put on your breaker that could talk to your balcony solar system to help throttle it to the right power output seems very, very easily done at this stage and where we are technologically.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to get one of these things. I guess like if somebody was devious, they could try to figure out a way to where they connect 10 balcony solar systems and 10 space heaters into one circuit with 10 power strips, and they probably could figure something out that would not be safe. But you could still do that probably with 10 space heaters,
You could do that today, right? And people do. I always think of Chevy Chase Christmas Vacation, right? And his lighting setup in the garage, if you remember that movie.
It's been a while. It's been too many decades.
Yeah. Well, he plugs like 5,000 watts of lights into one outlet, basically.
Yeah. Well, we all have some homework now. We got to go check that out. Remember, Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase. All right.
There you go.
Great. Okay. Well, it's been really good talking to you, Jason Sharpe.
Yes, you too, Sean White. It's awesome to sit down and chat with you. Appreciate what you do in the industry and appreciate the opportunity I love talking about the industry. So anytime.
Okay. And I'm looking right next to your name. It says COSA. Is that Colorado Solar and Storage Association?
Yes, it is. I sit on a policy committee there and actually use this forum for a recent policy meeting around meter collars. We're trying to pass a bill to support meter collars, and I had changed my name to COSA. So yeah, I sit on their executive policy committee.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just got on the ASIS board, American Solar Energy Society. So I'm pretty active with them, and they're centered out of Colorado. So love going there.
Nice. Well, next time you're in town, we should go have dinner.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd love that. And let's do this again whenever you want. Just let me know. And we can have another one of these chats. So great.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jason Sharpe, the CEO of Namaste Solar. And where can people go to get Namaste Solar to install their solar system, or better yet, go get a job and own part of your company and be your boss?
Yeah, our website's www.namastesolar.com. So come check us out and say hi if you're in Colorado.
Okay, I'm going to point my hands up in the praying position and say, Namaste, Jason Sharpe.
Namaste, Sean.
All right. Thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To find out more, go to SolarSEAN.com and get yourself NABCEP certified. And if you're NABCEP certified, maybe you could be working over there at Namaste Solar, get one of those real good jobs where you can own part of a solar company.